Hi, I'm Randy Cantrell. Welcome to the Year of the Peer podcast with Leo Batari. This podcast is based on a simple truth. Who you surround yourself with matters. Author and keynote speaker Leo Batari will interview thought leaders from all walks of life who will share how they leverage peer advantage and show you how engaging your peers more purposefully can hold the key to greater success in business and in life. Today's guest is Simon Alexander Ong. Simon works with leaders, entrepreneurs, and teams who are ready and committed for the next level of their success. As a coach and business strategist, he helps them transcend perceived limitations, dream bigger than they've ever done before, and to see how powerful and gifted they truly are. We welcome Simon to the show.
Simon, welcome to the show. It's just so great to have you here. We had such a great conversation a number of weeks ago about your work as a life coach and a business strategist, and how I think you really embrace so many of the concepts that we talk about in terms of who you surround yourself with matters and what that can mean to your success in business and in life. And welcome. Really look forward to talking with you today.
Thank you, Leo. It's good to be on the show. I've followed all the work you do, and when you told me about the book you released, I resonated a lot with the message you're getting across there. So it's fantastic to discuss, share, and our thoughts on that subject.
Well, part of what I was intrigued with was you said as a teenager, you read, and even referred to as a young teenager, you read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And you said that really struck a chord with you, and I think has really, stuck with you a bit. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what connected with you about that and how that has found its way into the way you work today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was one of those teenagers, Leo, in which, I would go home to my relative's place and I would spend the summer with my wider family in Singapore and Malaysia, where they still are now. And I remember during these summer holidays, this was before smartphones, internet. This was before we had all of this stuff to distract us from connecting with people. And so while my uncle and aunt were sort of doing the work, I would sort of sneak into the study and then sort of the bedroom and browse their sort of bookshelf. And I came across this small book. There's a lot of big books there, but there's a small book at the corner of the shelf, and it looks quite rugged, quite used. And I was just curious to see what this book was about. On the front was an ever so simple cover that simply said, "Think and Grow Rich." And as a teenager, the word that struck out to me was rich. And I was curious, can I just think and become rich? And so it piqued my curiosity. And so I stole, or should I say borrowed, the book from the bookshelf. And I started reading into it. And I guess as I delved into the book, my mind started shifting a little bit more in the sense of reflection on my own life, reflection on perhaps what I could achieve just by hearing about the stories that Napoleon Hill shared in the book. But I think the key part of the book that really piqued my curiosity to the next stage was his talk about the concept of mastermind. And I had no idea what a mastermind group was, or let alone even a mastermind peer group was. And I remember sort of asking my uncle at the time what a mastermind was, and he had no idea. I mean, he sort of got these books just to read and just for entertainment purposes and to kill some time and to develop himself. And I remember that stuck with me ever since then, the sort of concept of a mastermind. And as I began my journey as a young adult, got my first job, started my businesses, started working with people, I found myself about 4 or 5 years ago experiencing my first ever mastermind group. And it brought back memories of that time when I first picked up Napoleon Hill's book as a teenager. And I almost had to reread the book again when I experienced the power of the mastermind group, just to really appreciate the wisdom he was sharing in the book at a time that I didn't fully get at that moment.
So tell me a little bit about that first mastermind group. Who was in it? Why did you kind of put that together? How was it organized? And what did you really get from it that you felt was so valuable?
Yeah, it was really interesting actually. I remember I was at it was a friend's birthday in West London here in the UK, and I went there for I just go have a few drinks, meet some new people, connect with new friends as you do, and we got chatting about the concept of failure. I got chatting with a group of 2 or 3 people about the concept of failure, and how actually it's just an outcome. I'm sorry, it's not an outcome. It's just a process of not trying. And I met a person at the time running an entrepreneur academy here in the UK, teaching entrepreneurs how to grow their businesses, how to make money from what they were doing and what they're passionate about. And he said to me at the end of the conversation, he said, "I've really enjoyed the conversation we've had this evening. I'm running a mastermind group in sort of starting in 2 weeks' time. Would you be interested to come along and attend?" And I said, "Well, I've been thinking about this for a while. Yeah, I've read stuff about it. And now the opportunity has arisen for me to experience this mastermind group." So I said, yes. It was a no-brainer for me. I said, yes, I'm going to turn up. I want to see what this is all about. The funny thing was, a couple of days before the mastermind was to take place, he said to me, "Simon, it's taking place at the Ritz, by the way." And in my head, I thought, that's quite a fancy place for a mastermind group. I've got to shine my black shoes, get my suit out the cupboard. And I thought this was going to be a fairly simple meeting, but it sounds like it's in very plush surroundings. And so I walked to this Ritz Hotel in West London, and we sit down in a group of about 10 or 12 of us. And when people started introducing themselves, and you got to remember, this was just the introductions, I was already blown away. I mean, you had someone, the first person to introduce himself said that he used to work at Goldman Sachs as a lawyer. He left that to pursue a career in food industry. He loved cooking, so he would spend his lunch, his mornings, and after work apprenticing at some of London's best restaurants. And fast forward to today, he has co-founded one of the biggest, most exciting startups in Europe, in HelloFresh, which is now looking to go public as a company. It moved to the second person. The second person was a national best-selling author in the United States. And I was just blown away by these people. I mean, again, we've not even gone past the introductions. And I guess looking back now, what that had done to me at the subconscious level, it had blown apart my ceiling of possibility. And that experience, I remember coming home after this mastermind, and I was sharing my excitement with my now wife. And I was telling her, it reminded me of, I don't know if you sort of recall the story of Roger Bannister, 1954.
Sure.
So Roger Bannister was a UK athlete, and before he took part in this mile race, doctors, scientists, sports commentators, everyone said at the time it was impossible to run a sub 4-minute mile. At that time, they all said it's impossible. In 1954, Roger Bannister then breaks that by literally the tiniest of margins. He completes a mile, 3 minutes, 59 seconds.
Right.
But what's most interesting is not the fact he broke it. It's the fact that within just 46 days after he broke it, someone else had broken it. And then days after that, someone else broke it. Because what had happened is that now he had shown what's possible. Suddenly, every other person after him said, actually, sub 4-minute miles are now possible. And it's the same feeling I got when I was in this group of people, or peers, if you will, from different industries, from different businesses, from different walks of life. I was almost being shown what's possible, because we work in whatever field we're in. Often we can get so caught up in that field and we can't see the wood from the trees. But when we expose ourselves to different perspectives, it opens up so much more in our mind in terms of creative potential.
Well, I think what's interesting too is, as you've described this group to me before, there were some people in it who may have been on a more of a linear, track, and others who were completely changing, what they did. Like you said, the Goldman lawyer, and now all of a sudden, his love for food, and it leads him into the food industry, was really fascinating from a standpoint of also, I would imagine, looking at your own life and seeing just what's out there, just being exposed to that much more in terms of not only that there aren't limitations, but that there are many more possibilities out there than you might have imagined.
No, totally. I mean, the impact is, I'll say you can't even imagine what the impact is. I mean, I remember I started that one day, and I continued with this for a number of weeks, this sort of mastermind group. And this really was evidence to me the power of who we surround ourselves with, because the benefits of that was multiple. I mean, like you said, we've touched on possibilities, accessing more of our creative potential. And I think the third area, which a lot of people underestimate until they really get into a peer group such as a mastermind or surround themselves with people who are on their same journey, is accountability. Is being held accountable to a group of people who are committed. And I think that's the key part for me, is that I had before surrounded myself with, and it was probably an unconscious thing, but it still was a result of my previous self, in which I was around people who were merely interested in what they wanted to achieve, what they wanted to do, and how they wanted to grow. And over time, by consciously changing who I surrounded myself with, I understood the difference between commitment and interest. Because people who are interested will talk about it more than they actually do. But I found that people who are committed, it's almost excuses have gone out. There's a decision that's been made that this is going to happen no matter what. They've made it in their mind. The focus is now how.
So yeah,
that mindset shift was very powerful for me to experience.
You know, and the other thing you brought up that I think is interesting is, you know, as the people introduced themselves around the room to you that day, and you were so impressed by each individual as they talked about their credentials and who they were. Now, you being in that room, you're one of the younger folks there. And
yeah,
what do you think, like, and I'm sure that, so after you attended a few meetings, what do you think was the value you brought to them in terms of the you know, experiences and perspectives and kind of the world you grew up in, let's say? What value do you believe you added to that group? If I were to ask those people, hey, all right, what did Simon how did he make a difference in your life and the way you looked at things? How would you characterize that?
Yeah, I would say the value I provided to the group is, like you said, even though I was the younger one there, I was probably not as far in my own journey as they were.
Yeah.
For my contribution, I would say is my ability to assimilate vast amounts of information. Yeah, I guess my wife likes to refer to me as a sponge. I'm always absorbing information, but the ability to then take that information and to almost codify it in a way that people can understand a vast array of information, but in a way they can go, okay, this is how I can apply it. So whether that is you know, reading books, going to conferences, connecting with mentors, connecting with people in interesting industries, perhaps different industries to my own, because I've got fascinated about something they did, connecting with people through social media to understand what they do, and then learning from all of those different sources, and then being able to translate that into, actually, this is the core of what they're doing, and this is why they've accelerated in these different areas of their life or their business or their career or their relationships and so on. So it's the ability to codify that and to share my learnings in a way that people got it. You know, people listen and said, yeah, I can get what you're saying. It's a really interesting way you put it.
How much do you think that, and when you consider not only what you got from them and what you learned and some affirmation you may have received from your fellow mastermind group members, but also seeing that you were making a contribution to that group, how much does that actually help your confidence and your self-esteem and your ability to think that, yes, I can do anything that I set my mind to, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it was great for the confidence, but what it made me also realize is that at the fundamental level, we're all human. We're all learning still. We are all at different stages of our journeys. But if there's anything I've learned through my sort of career so far and through what I do, is that the most successful people are always students. They always remain students. They're always learning. They're always developing. They're always willing to hear different perspectives. I remember I was doing a talk just last night here in London, Leah, and someone said, how about people that consider themselves successful? You know, what happens if you're already a success? And I said, Well, here's the thing. If you consider success to be a destination, the problem is you're going to fail very quickly. And the reason is because what's after success? The problem is when people get success, when they think they've hit that destination, they enjoy the rewards of success, but forget how they got there. And it's often why in America, the same, whatever country you're in the world, sports teams, it's a lot easier for a sports team to win that champion trophy, that championship, whatever sport they're doing. But it's a hell of a lot tougher to win it a second, third, a fourth, and a fifth time. Because what it shows is that so many people focus on the outcome. But what's better is to focus on the process, the journey, the sort of everyday things that we can do so that we always remain students in that way. And so what I had felt being in this group is that we all connected not because of this is impressive or that's impressive or this is where he is or she is. We all connected because we valued each other as just humans. We connected as just people who were on this incredible experience of life together, but where we were heading in similar directions, obviously in different industries, but we were heading in a similar direction mentally, and we could share those journeys with each other so we could learn almost and help open us up when we would have issues, challenges, and obstacles, especially thinking from a mindset that we could question and encourage that person to overcome it.
You know, you brought up a word too that I think is really critical, and this is this idea of being committed. And I think that there's a number of ways to think about that. One is that, you know, you go there committed to others, committed to the responsibility you have to be there. On the other hand, it was kind of interesting. A few weeks ago, we had Angela Myers on the show, and Angela basically leads a movement which really talks about how it's about mattering. It's about knowing that we matter, knowing that we can make a difference to others, and that if we believe that, we know that my presence at that meeting, my being present at that meeting and bringing my A game to listening and to providing whatever I can is valuable to others. And at the same time, there's that learning part of it, to your point, where you know we take in you know, just as well. And I guess, you know, to me, when she talks about if you believe you matter, then I think that drives a level of commitment that can be very, very powerful. You know, it kind of feeds on itself a bit. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the stuff you talk about belief, I think is very important, because what it shows is that a lot of what happens has to happen in the mind first. You know, what I say to people is that you win in the mind first before you win in reality, because a lot of the thinking goes on here. So you touch on belief, and I think that's such an important thing, because our actions, our feeling is all driven by thought, in the sense that, you know, if we believe that we matter, if we believe that something is possible, if we believe that something has a high probability of occurring, then the action we take is going to be fairly substantial. You know, we're going to take a big amount of action because that belief is backing up the action. And we may get good results or we may get great results, but we're going to get some results. And those results feed back, and it tells us in our subconscious, it says, actually, this could work. Actually, this wasn't too bad. And so you feel more confident to take even more action, and you create a momentum effect that actually pushes you forward and beyond. But when that belief is minimal, it's not that great, you doubt yourself, what happens, the action isn't supported by it by as strong as a belief. And so you lack that confidence, or you express energy of inferiority, or, you know, you kind of don't do that much because you don't really believe it's going to happen. And so the results you get aren't really going to be there. And in the opposite effect, you end up telling yourself, perhaps this isn't for me. Perhaps this isn't going to work. And then you end up taking less action to the point you just stop. And so I do think that belief is such a core component to how we show up in life.
Oh, absolutely. Tell me, when you were first, you know, when you first became part of that mastermind group, what were you doing in your career at that point? Where were you working? What stage of things were you at? I know it was, you know, it was early in your career, certainly. What were you doing at the time?
Yeah, so at the time I joined this mastermind group, I literally had just started getting my first few clients as a coach. I sort of started speaking at different conferences. And so this I thought would be quite beneficial for me in order to explore one, I guess, who is in this group, two, what I could learn, and three, how valuable my contributions could be to those taking part. And like I said, I heard a lot about it in the past, and I thought this was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to at least experience it and see what I could get out of it, as well as what I could contribute. And in the weeks after, it was just phenomenal. I mean, some of the results, for example, having my fully blown refreshed website up and running, having another few series of prospect calls lined up, having 2 or 3 workshops already sort of in the process of being sold, all within a matter of a few weeks, because of the element of accountability, because the element of things are now possible. Actually, there's a lot of things I can do. Because often I find many people focus in this moment, so those listening to this, many focus on what they don't have in life. But actually, if you focus on what you have, you end up finding you're actually more resourceful than you think you are in the first instance. So I started focusing more on what I had, how I could be more resourceful. And that was one of the impacts of being part of this group in this peers of people who had visionary ideas of what they wanted to achieve.
Yeah, I could see where the group experience would be kind of real great coaching practice in many respects, right? With some of what you had there. But tell me a little bit about, so what or who influenced you to engage pretty early on in this career of being a life coach and being a business strategist? I mean, how did that come about for you? And were there any particular people who influenced that for you when you were, initially making your career decision about how you could make a difference?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's quite funny. I mean, I often get asked, how did I start in this career in coaching? And the honest answer is a little bit by accident, as it goes, but fortunate accident in hindsight. So I studied at university here called the London School of Economics, studied an economics degree. And in my final year, I had met someone who worked in the financial industry. He quit his job and he wanted to start a careers coaching company. And so he had approached me through a mutual friend, and we got chatting. And he said, Simon, I'm looking to set up this careers coaching company, and we need a few coaches to help students land jobs in the city. So the target market were Chinese students, Middle Eastern students, basically people who had the money to afford investment into helping them land attractive, well-paid careers. Now, I'm being a student here. I had some student debt to pay off, my sort of tuition fees. And so, of course, the answer was yes, take me on board. So the initial incentive was monetary. However, as I began working with these people who were great academically, got top marks, top of the class, but they weren't the best presenting themselves in front of a panel of 4 people, being interviewed by someone or being grilled in sort of a 60-minute interview. And so I focused on really getting them to a level where they would move from the pain of not wanting to show up, not wanting to be in front of these people, nervous, sweaty palms, and sort of just forgetting all their words and what they wanted to really sell about themselves, to the pain of having to choose between multiple job offers. So I know which pain I would choose, the pain of choosing from multiple job offers.
Yes.
And so that was my job to take them there. And through that journey, I got really fascinated about not just elements of confidence, but the role that the mind plays in how we show up, as well as human potential. And as I worked with these people, they sort of got their jobs, they moved up in the organizations. I stayed in touch with them. And a number of years later, they said to me, they called me up again, 1 or 2 of them, and said, Simon, I'm doing quite well in my career. I've moved up to vice president, or I'm now director of the company. But I'm curious, I've really enjoyed working with you on my career. So do you work in any other areas? And so I said, well, I'm just training at the moment, doing my qualifications. And so if you want, you can be my guinea pig. I'll give you a discounted rate to what I charged you before. And if you want to experiment, then let's create a win-win scenario. You win because you save money. I win because I get to practice and help you as well, but also benefit me in being able to practice and take this to a big audience. And that's how I started moving more into that sort of life coaching arena. And in terms of the business strategy, Leo, it wasn't until about maybe a year or 2 after that that I got invited by one of the UK's biggest banks, Barclays, to do a talk with the executive management team, the sort of people who are in charge of teams at the beginning of the year in January, when people are setting New Year's resolutions, they're setting New Year targets, they're setting New Year strategy, to share some of my thoughts about that area. How do we set something that can motivate employees? How can we address the well-being of employees in order to create a productive workforce? And that's how that part really started going. And I had a unique, I guess, background of seeing things from not only that coaching perspective, but also the business perspective, which draws on what I said earlier, my ability to connect well with people in the business sphere, read a lot about the business sphere, attend conferences, digest that information, codify in a way that people can go, actually, that's a very good strategy. Well, that's a very good insight. And so that unique combination, in a way, has sort of led me to where I am today.
How much in your coaching do you also, in addition to the one-to-one coaching you do with them, do you encourage them to kind of surround themselves with the kind of people that can help them make them successful, depending on what goal they have, right? Like, I know you've got a wide range of interests. Sometimes people may want to succeed in business, and there's people you want to surround yourself to help you do that. But then if they want to run a marathon, then you want to surround yourself with people who have done that and want to do that also, right? So that they can, be helpful to you and move you along. As you said, cheer you on, hold you accountable, give you advice and tips that are relevant to helping you be successful. So how does that factor into the way you coach others in terms of their surrounding themselves with the kind of people that can help them achieve their goals?
I think it's something I strongly encourage. I remember reading this quote not too long ago, and it said, if you want to be healthy, surround yourself with 5 of the fittest and healthiest people you know, and you'll be the 6th. If you want to be successful, hang around with 5 of the most successful people you know, you'll be the 6th. If you want to be a millionaire, hang around with 5 of millionaires that you know, and you'll be the 6th. And so for me, it's part of what I call our daily rituals, habits, and choices. It's being conscious about who are we spending most of our time with every day. And what I say to people is that you can set big goals. Try and realize your potential. If you don't have a group of people around you that will encourage and support you through that journey, because we can have the vision, we can have the belief that things are going to work, but if you're around people that are filled with negativity, and you can probably imagine some people like that, they walk into a room, they suck the energy, drain the energy out of the room, and you kind of feel, why did this person come to the party? And that's the sort of people I mean. If you surround yourself with that people, no matter how talented you are, no matter what potential you have, we can't help but be affected by that energy. And I often say every connection we have with humans, every business transaction, everything is about energy transference. When you're with someone who's very positive, you naturally get uplifted. If you're with someone that's negative, you tire quickly. You almost feel the energy snap out of your body. And so that's why it's such an important foundational habit, I find, to be conscious of who you surround yourself with day to day. And like I said, whether you're in business, it's surrounding yourself with people perhaps who run other businesses. So you can share some of the thoughts you have as a business leader. You can share some of the challenges you may face day to day. And you can share your ideas with them. Perhaps they can give you insights. Perhaps they've been through something similar in the past. And that helps to bypass a lot of potentially months or even years of pain just because someone else has already done it. I often say, if you want to understand something, not only surround yourself with like-minded people who are further ahead than you, but also read biographies, read books from people who've done it before, because success leaves clues. And there's no point reinventing the wheel sometimes if those clues are still valid today as they were back then.
It's interesting when you talked earlier about coaching and kind of first getting into it just to make sure you could pay off your student loans. And there was that, monetary aspect of it. But I also know that you feel a great sense of joy in some of the other currencies that come from your work. And that is largely from when you are coaching someone and that person achieves a level of success that you find to be probably maybe most rewarding of all. And without necessarily, giving up anyone's identity or anything else here. Is there a story or two that you feel that you'd like to share that's really gratifying about maybe a success story that you're particularly feel proud of in terms of the hand that you played there?
Yeah, definitely. I guess a recent one with a client I worked with in the last year for me was probably my most satisfying, purely because she was probably the shyest of the clients I've had to work with in the past number of years. So she wasn't the most confident to share what she was doing, to share her work with people, to promote herself publicly. And so she was coming to me because she was at a point where she was in a job where she was doing sales for a healthcare company. But this was purely just to pay the bills. This was purely just to, get a job to stay in London so that she can maintain a life here in the city. But I remember meeting up with her and she said, I don't feel fulfilled in this job. And I remember we sort of paused and I got her to just have some space to think about all the stuff that she would enjoy doing.
So how did you connect with her initially? How did that start?
Yeah, so I guess how I met her was through a referral. So I had worked with someone before, and she recommended me to her friend, and she said, I think you could do with a powerful conversation with Simon. I mean, there's no obligation. You guys can just meet up, connect, and
got it.
If something comes out of it, great. If not, perhaps you still can benefit from a conversation. And so this is where the conversation started, where we just explored some of the things that she wanted to explore, or things that made her more happier. And I could see her face when she was writing down some of these ideas on bullet points on a piece of paper. You could see her face light up or her smile come up when she was writing all these different things down. And that's always the part I like about when I have these initial conversations, because in life, most of us know what we don't want. Whether that is, I don't want to work with this boss anymore. I don't want to work with this team anymore. I don't want to be obese anymore, whatever it is. I don't want to live in this situation anymore. But when faced with such a simple question of, so what is it do you truly want? Many people get stuck on that question, even though it's a fairly simple question. And it's because we don't slow down. We don't take the time to slow down enough to reflect on important questions like that. So I gave her the space to really slow down and to just take the time to explore all those things that are going on in her mind and just put them all onto paper without any limitation or without any second guessing in her mind, because our mind can be quite dominant sometimes to say, question you. Is this really what you want to do? Can we actually do it? And so ignore that and just put whatever comes to mind on paper. And so she decided after this conversation, which was about 90 minutes, to then go, Simon, yes, let's explore this. But she could only commit to once a month at the beginning. And again, this was fairly new for her, so she wanted to see what it was like first.
Sure.
And the great thing is, without sort of going too much into detail, fast forward a year, and she's now moved out of her job in the healthcare company, and she's now realizing one of her true passions, which is to become a photographer, because she's always enjoyed taking photography of weddings, of events, and now she's getting paid for that. I mean, January this year, she started getting her first paying clients, and now she's getting quite a few lists of people asking her to shoot their events or shoot their wedding. That the funny thing about this story is that my last two events, I now became her client, and she was my photographer shooting my events for me. And so it's funny how this sort of evolution works. But again, what was very satisfying was that the journey she had gone through, she had not only achieved the outcomes which we now see a year plus on, but also she has changed as a person, in the sense that she has a higher self-esteem, she has higher belief in her capabilities, and also she's more confident to share her work with people, but in her own way. She's found the way that works for her, that she can share her journey and the work she's creating with not just her friends and family, but the public at large.
You brought up a really important point, I think, with regard to just being able to express what it is I want. And sometimes I don't think it's because we don't know. I think it's because somehow we become fearful to express it. We become fearful to say it out loud for the risk of, you can't do that, or or people being those naysayers or whatever. I mean, that's it's difficult. It's really putting yourself out there in a way that, and I think what was great about the story you told is you obviously, for someone who you said was pretty reserved and pretty shy, provided a safe enough environment for her to be able to say, this is what I would love to do. This is what would fuel my passion. This is what this is about. And I think sometimes, whether it's in these one-to-one coaching sessions or in a mastermind group environment, as you talked about, if we can create a place for people where we make it safe to express really what it is they want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what a great start. I mean, if you could just get started there, I think it just makes such a big difference.
No, I totally agree, Leo. I mean, and this is why I love what I do, because I remember one of my clients, she said to me, Simon, it's funny. I've got to tell you this. It's funny. She says to me, I've told you probably more about my personal thing, what's going on in my mind, than I've told my husband.
Sure.
And I was like, wow. And it's because, as you said just now, Leo, is the reason is she feels that if she was to share some of this with, whether it's her husband, her parents, her friends, she would be judged.
Yes.
But in a space where you're not judging them, but you're listening from the heart and you're saying, tell me more. What makes you think that? And you are on that journey with them. I remember another client finally said to me, Simon, it feels like you're the Sherlock Holmes of my mind, because I'm giving you all these clues and you feel like you're deciphering what's the thinking behind that.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes scary. And the reason is because when you're in that space where you can be fully transparent, you share some of your deepest thoughts. And when I listen to that, often that tells me a lot of what's going on internally, that I can almost reflect that back and just check in with them. Is this what you're thinking? Is there someone else that you're trying to please here? And to really try and understand the core of their sort of thinking here, because what I realize is that we all live in our own realities, customized realities. There's no such thing as one reality, in the sense that we're feeding our thinking moment to moment to moment. So what that means is that what we bring into our thinking, we feel. The thought drives our reality, because there's no such thing as good or bad. We just have the power to choose one thought over another. Some people choose good, some people choose bad, some people say it's a challenge, some people say it's a problem. And so when we can see it from an objective point of view, what we happen to do is we just start to dissect it, and we understand the source of where a lot of these sometimes problematic thinking comes from. And we often find it's something that's been integrated in someone's life for such a long period.
So do you have any advice for, I think, a lot of us who can find ourselves from time to time slipping into judging mode as opposed to learning mode? I think as much as possible, we want to be in learning, listening mode, not in judging mode. Any thoughts for how we can be better at that?
Yeah, I mean, I always say we're all human at the end of the day, and no matter what we do, I think we're always going to judge to some degree in our life. We're never going to rule out judging full stop. But what I think is more wiser to focus on is to focus on curiosity. Take the attention away from myself and put the attention onto the person in front of you. There's a story I read where there was two British prime ministers, and one person had the opportunity to speak to both prime ministers during her lifetime. And she said, I remember I spoke to the first prime minister, and when I had a conversation with him, I felt like he was the most fascinating, interesting person I'd ever met. But when I met the second prime minister, he made me feel I was the most interesting and amazing person that I even thought I was. And it's purely because the second prime minister, what he did is he put the focus on her. And I think that helps to take away the element of judging, because when we listen to what someone says and we judge, we're focusing on us, on our thoughts,
Yes.
on our model of the world, on our mental models of the world. But when we listen with curiosity, we listen and we want to find out more. And that allows someone to be truly heard and to be truly understood. I mean, it's like what Stephen Covey said in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People: seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that I find very powerful, because if we come from curiosity, without realizing it, the judging goes away. Because actually you're like, tell me more.
Yeah.
What makes you think that? What do you mean specifically by this? You start to really enter their world. And that, I think, is quite powerful, not just for the listener, but for the person being listened to. Because I'm not sure about you, Leo, but how many people, even us, how often do we feel we've truly been listened to?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. It's usually feeling like you're talking and someone else is formulating their response while you're... So I think, well, first of all, as you said, we may not be able to eliminate judging entirely, but you gave, I think, some really terrific advice about how to think about it differently. And I think you looking at it through that curiosity lens, I think is fantastic. Now, of course, your show's going to run the first week in August. So just want to let I think our listeners know how they can get to learn more about you and your work. Maybe you have an upcoming speaking engagement, where they can find you online. But I'd really love to have this be a starter in terms of more and more people getting to learn about your work and who you are, and the value I think you can provide. So how do they learn more about you?
If you're interested in finding out more about what I do, getting involved, then the website is fairly straightforward. It's www.simoninspires.com. So that's www.simoninspires.com. And if you're on social media, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, which is the handle @SimonAlexanderO. So if you follow those channels, if you subscribe to the website, you'll get an update of when my next speaking engagements are. Also, if you're based in London, or if you're moving to London in the near future, I'll be starting my own mastermind, my next mastermind group, actually. So I'm part of a mastermind group, but I now run mastermind groups to showcase to people the power of peers, beginning in September. So to help people end the year on a high and to begin 2018 in the best possible spirits. Because I don't know if you've reflected on this, Leo, but it's only 24 weeks until Christmas. And I know a lot of people haven't followed through with many of the things they said at the beginning of the year. And so it can be good timing for people who've started to think, this is the time to step up. This is the time to show up and make sure I can, by the time the end of the year comes, I can look back and say, this year has been a productive one. I'm so glad I started then.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you can let me know when some of those mastermind groups are, and you wouldn't mind having me join as a guest sometime, I would certainly love to do that. And I just want to thank you so much also just for being on the program today. It was so exciting to have you. You shared just, I think, some incredible wisdom and insights for everyone. And just thank you so much for being on the program.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having me on the program today, Leo.
You bet.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more about Peer Advantage, to submit questions to Leo and our guest, and to subscribe to the Year of the Peer podcast, please visit us at leobattari.com. It's leobottary.com. This podcast is produced by me, Randy Cantrell, hosted, of course, by Leo Battari. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod, Vibe Ace. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.